guys good? Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? So, I'm going to provide an update from yesterday's incident involving our officers and a development investigation that we have that occurred yesterday evening. But first, I'd like to get started with how our officers are doing. Officers that were involved in the incident yesterday were shot, and that they are currently recovering. One of our officers is recovering, in fact, is being released from one of the local hospitals as we speak. And our second officer that was shot had successful surgery earlier this afternoon, and will be recovering from the surgery and then be pending his release from the hospital. So with that being said, following this press conference, we will be releasing a written statement with the names of the officers that were shot and also with the names of the three victims, and I'll get to the two that I spoke of briefly of. So we'll be releasing that there shortly following this press conference with a written statement that we'll put out for all of you guys. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline, starting out yesterday with what occurred with the initial incident. So at 14:07 hours, at 2:07 p.m., our communication center received a phone call from 473 Forgle Avenue Northeast with regards to a domestic disturbance that was taking place and occurring at their residence. So at 14:19, officers arrived on scene to determine what was going on there in terms of the domestic dispute. While they arrived on scene, our officers made contact with the uncle of our suspect in this investigation. And the uncle was advising our officers that they were having an issue and a disturbance with our suspect at the time, prior to officers' arrival, and that potentially that he may have had some weapons with him on his person and also in his vehicle. As that was happening and transpiring, the suspect exited the residence at 473 Forgle from the front door, at which point one of our officers approached him to speak with him. The suspect refused to have any conversation with the officers and made a hasty fast-paced walk down the driveway down towards his vehicle. Now, with that being said, the uncle reminded and reiterated our officers that he had an arsenal of weapons inside his vehicle. So to prevent, and not knowing what exactly was taking place and what transpired, to prevent anything drastic from happening, our officers confronted him, the suspect, Brandon Kappas, at that time, to which he was still not complying with the officer's command, at which point one of our officers tased our suspect, which the taser proved to be ineffective at that moment. The officer was a brief struggle with the officer and the suspect to where the suspect broke free, and at which point the shooting began from our suspect towards our officers. Shots fired were called on our radio traffic at 14:25 hours, and at 14:36 hours, the suspect was shot and killed by our officers. Shortly thereafter, later on in the evening, as we all are aware that Florida Department of Law Enforcement, with the assistance and support from the Broward County Sheriff's Office, are conducting that investigation involving our officers. As a result of the initial accident, I reported yesterday that one of the victims on scene was related to our suspect. In fact, it was his grandfather that our suspect, based on our initial investigation, shot and killed. Later on in the scene, in the vehicle that was on scene that was driven there by our suspect, after a search of the vehicle, an arsenal of weapons was in fact found as a result of our suspect's actions. Unknown what his intentions were, to show up at his family's residence with this arsenal of weapons in the vehicle. This will also be released in our statement that we'll be putting out following this press conference. But what I can tell you is that our officers' actions yesterday prevented something even more tragic and devastating from happening, and potentially what could have been potentially an active shooter type incident and scenario. So our investigators were able to locate an address through the registration of the vehicle that did not come back to our suspect. With that, our investigators responded out to an address in the northwest area of our city, Kamloops Drive Northwest, that will provide the exact numerics of that in our statement following the press conference, to attempt to make contact with the owners of the vehicle. In that attempt, what our investigators discovered was 2 additional victims that were deceased as a result of initially right now what we have of being shot. So with that being said, I know many of you are aware that the Catholic Diocese of Orlando also released a statement pertaining to one of our victims. I will not be releasing their names right now. I will be releasing them for transparency purposes, obviously, but also for accuracy purposes in terms of spelling. The names of our victims, all 3 victims, will be released shortly following this press conference, as well as some photographs, one of which I just showed a few minutes ago. Our victim, or our suspect rather, Brandon Kappas, 24 years old, as I reported yesterday, his criminal history consisted of DUI and resisting arrest. We don't know right now. It's still a fluid and active investigation in terms of the 2 victims that we discovered last night, in terms of what the cause was or what the relationship was with those 2 victims with our suspect. So our investigators are still going through that to ensure that we have everything in place, next of kin have been notified before we release any further information. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up for a few questions.
Chief, can you tell us when the suspect's grandfather was killed? You mentioned he was the victim after the scene. When did that happen?
So anytime, I don't have the exact time, and I'll get that for you, between 14:25 hours and 14:36 hours, so shortly thereafter. Shortly thereafter, our initial call where our officers notified us via our communications at 14:25 hours over the radio is when they initially started getting shot at. So anytime in between there.
Chief, are you tying Brandon Kappas to those 2 victims at the other home?
Yes.
What evidence there?
Well, again, it's ongoing. I don't want to release that right now, but I can assure you and tell you that it is connected with our suspect.
And was that his family?
No, from what we have right now, what I can release is that they're not related, but there is some type of relationship. So we don't know to what degree that is. So we will be releasing that once we get further on that to put out, but I want to make sure that we have everything. So I don't want to speculate on anything. I don't want to put out theories. I want to make sure we have everything we need for you guys.
Have they reported their car stolen?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Chief, as a follow-up, because there was an exchange of gunfire, do you know if Kappas actually shot his grandfather or if that was during the exchange
Yes,
of gunfire?
he did.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any motive on that, or any motive for the other 2 people who were shot?
You know, and that's what's, it's all tragic. This is all tragic, you know, but we don't know the motive right now. You know, between Florida Department of Law Enforcement and with our own homicide team, after identifying the 2 victims from last night, we're trying to figure that out, to be honest with you, you know, but I wanted to be as transparent as possible with you guys. I know you guys have been waiting, and I appreciate you guys being patient with me and our organization, and also respecting the privacy of our officers and the families of our suspect, and obviously the family of our other 2 victims. But we're trying to figure that out. But we will get that. We will have that for you guys, and we will definitely let you guys know. You know, anytime, listen, I've been in law enforcement for 25 years, and we consider it a very good career when you never have to draw your weapon. No officer wants to discharge their firearm, let alone take a life. But unfortunately, because of the suspect's actions yesterday, our officers had to do that. And our officers have to live with that in their mind. Okay, so alone, not just separate from having to deal with their physical recovery of being shot and the injuries and the wounds that they sustained as a result of his actions, the suspect's actions, there's also an emotional and a psychological component that they're also going to have to recover from as well. And we're there to support them 100%, our officers and their families, but we'll get there.
Chief, speaking about your organization, Palm Bay Police in particular, since the holidays, has been dealing with a lot of people who may be barricaded subjects or threatening to harm themselves or others, and it's been resolved peacefully. What does it say about the caliber of the people in your department that despite going to help these people in these troubling circumstances, when they're met but at the same circumstance met with gunfire, and they're still willing to come to the job every day.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Resolve and truly committed to protecting and serving their community. We all take an oath. When we become a police officer, we take an oath to uphold the law. I know it's cliche and you hear it, but it's the truth. It means something. And for them to come back every day and every night, whether it's a barricaded incident, whether it's being shot at, whether it's being fought with, it shows who they truly are and what they're truly here. They're truly servants. And they're here to serve our community and protect and serve our citizens. And it's tough. It's tough. There are occasions to where they are resolved peacefully through negotiations. Our officers go through training, deal with the mental health and wellness of our citizens. They get certifications. But then there's always incidents to where no matter how much training you have involved, that it's going to become deadly. And our officers know that. They don't walk out the door. They know walking out their door when they leave their families every day and every night that what could potentially happen. But they don't dwell on it because they have to serve and they have to do their job. But it's a tough spot to be in. And I commend them. I applaud them. And I wouldn't have any other group of officers and support staff. I wouldn't want to be part of any other.
Did that grandfather try to stop the suspect and follow him? And is that
So from what I can say, and I know Florida Department of Law Enforcement is looking at that end of that portion of the investigation, he was trying to provide some assistance in terms of intervening with regards to his grandson.
Chief, the initial call that you guys got, did the family describe what the suspect was doing to cause trouble? Was he threatening anyone?
Being very disruptive inside the residence, damaging the property, things of that nature.
I know you mentioned that DUI, but any prior signs of mental health or drugs?
You know-
There's a motive here,
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get to. You're absolutely right. We don't know in terms of from speaking with the family, in terms of interaction with law enforcement. Other than those two, we don't have it. We don't have it, so we don't know what sparked it. But our investigators and Florida Department of Law Enforcement will get to the bottom of it.
Chief, did this happen during a birthday party? I asked because we saw a banner there in the neighborhood.
There was a birthday party at the residence where the family of the suspect resided. They were celebrating a birthday party. I'm not quite sure at this moment. I don't want to speculate and put things out there, but I'm not sure for who. But there was a party there.
So, Chief, it's been a rough couple of weeks here in Palm Bay. Last weekend, a triple homicide, and now this. What type of services are you providing your officers to kind of help cope with this added stress?
So, almost 2 years ago when I got sworn in as police chief for Palm Bay, my number one priority, and I spoke with our city manager, Suzanne Sherman, and with our council, is the mental health and wellness of our police officers and our staff within our police department. We cannot protect and serve, they cannot protect and serve our community if they themselves are not taken care of. And it is a priority, and will continue to be a priority in our organization to provide them with counseling, with support groups, peer supports. We have a wellness program within the police department that we initiated and created over a year ago, where we have peer support groups and teams that are certified, and we'll continue to provide for them. Our law enforcement community is truly family. The outpouring of thanks and support that I've gotten from them, but more importantly, from our citizens within our community. Since yesterday, and I will get to each and every one of them. I've gotten phone calls, text messages, and emails from our citizens thanking our officers for putting their life on the line in protection of their lives. They don't know them. The officer didn't know who the other citizens are in the community, but they were so grateful and thankful. And that outpouring of emotion and affection and support from our citizens truly goes a long way. And also, it displays the relationship that we have with our community here in Palm Bay. That we, although we are growing as a city, we are still community oriented, and the support and love for their law enforcement is there.
Do we know were those weapons registered to him, or do we know where those weapons came from?
I don't have that information, but I'll tell you now, once we get all these, we're going to have all those questions that you guys are putting out there for me that I can't give complete answers to. We'll provide that information for you guys.
And of all those weapons, what kind of gun did he use in the shooting?
What I can tell you was a handgun.
Was a gun used to kill the couple? How was the couple killed?
It was firearms were used, yes, that I can disclose.
Was the uncle at the party when he called 911? He was at the house?
Yes. Yep.
How far was the couple home from that house?
It was several miles. We're looking at in Forgo Avenue is northeast part of our city, and where the two victims that we found yesterday evening is in the northwest part of our city.
And is it a record of calls for service for any of those homes?
Well, we have a couple of calls for service, nothing significant in terms of the one on Forgo, but nothing that would arise to any type of concern or suspicion. And for where the other two victims were located at their residence, I don't have that information for you, but I'll get it to you guys.
So it's believed the suspect stole those victims' car?
No, I'm not speculating that. No, I can't say that
You said
definitively.
the car was registered to those victims?
Correct.
Right, okay.
And to be clear, they were not a couple, it's a retired priest and his sister, correct?
Yeah, according to, and we've been in communication with the Catholic Diocese of Orlando, and they did verify that one of our victims was in fact a retired priest with ties to our community here, and the second victim that he was with was his sister. Yes.
Chief, is it possible there's any other victims?
Well, you know, anything is possible. We thought yesterday that the scene that we had at Forgo and also by the churches there on Emerson and Americana, we thought that was it. But our investigation then led us to the address on Kamloops to find two additional victims. But right now, we seem to be pretty confident that is where we're at, but I'll never say 100% definitively.
So, Chief, you mentioned the priest, and what was his relationship like with officers in combat at the police department?
With the priest?
Yes.
Well, I can't really speak for the officers. I know he was a pillar of the community that I'm aware of for many, many years before his retirement, and I'm just going to leave that there with regards to that victim. Okay? I appreciate it. Yes. I'm gonna do it here. Where are you guys best at? Right here?
Thank you.
What's that? Good?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.